In just a week from now, Overwatch Champion Series Korea will start its Stage 2 playoffs. 8 teams go in, but only 4 come out for a chance at claiming their spot in the Esports World Cup. And while obviously this isn't the biggest tournament we'll have all year, it is important to find that mid-season form, to win some meaningful games and build up your confidence as you gear up to potentially win it all. In today's video, I'm going to give you a recap of the stage, the general feeling and confidence level surrounding all the participants, and my predictions on who I think advances to the next tournament. First things first, here's a look at the standings after a month of battling. The results certainly were not what I or many of you were expecting. Anything can happen in a high-pressure tournament, but there's no denying that things have changed quite a bit since Stage 1. The very top and bottom feel pretty normal, but everything else, for the most part, has been chaos. Zeta Division and Falcons both find themselves outside of the top 3 in the standings. I mean, for crying out loud, Falcons are playing in the last Chance Qualifier. Last year's champs could potentially get eliminated right away. The insanity of this region cannot be understated. Let's figure out how we got here exactly. So unfortunately, starting at the bottom, Vec did not make the cut. They got 9th place and they failed to win a single game, which means they will not be getting a shot at the next tournament and now face relegation yet again in OWCS. Overall, the gameplay was pretty lackluster and uninspiring for these guys. Despite this org making OWCS constantly, they always fail to make an impact. An easy win for almost everybody who took them on, and at this point, I'm just hoping this team goes away already, because I think I can speak for most of us when I say we have grown tired of watching them lose. But knowing them, they'll find a way to crawl back as they always do. As we say bon voyage to them for now, we move on to Onside Gaming, who finished just above them, barely making the cut. Genuinely, there is an opportunity for them to leapfrog a couple of teams just ahead of them, knowing the talent level and how close it really is. But for now, clearly they aren't quite there, and they'll need to take a step pretty quickly. It took basically everything they had just to beat Vec, and the rest of their games for the most part were a struggle. But even so, I still feel like there's a world where a few teams above them could end up being defeated at their hands. The roster on paper feels like it could be good enough. Kilo, Otto, Attack, Opener, Irony, at one point or another, they were household names, and they've had varying success in their careers. It's a respectable group, but unfortunately, at this point, they're old. They failed to refine their form as players so far, and you can tell some of them have lost a step or 3. And that's kinda why it's difficult to feel confident, at least for now. It's do or die for these old men. Let's find out if they have anything left in the tank. In 7th place was Pokerface, who found themselves winning 3 games this stage, and while they generally finished around where most people would expect, they still felt disappointing in a way. Just knowing the changes made to the roster and their performance in the promotion relegation tournament, we were kind of hoping to see a bit more success across the entirety of the qualifier. It felt like they lost games they shouldn't have, while wins were closer than they should have been. They definitely aren't playing up to their potential, and they're left with some question marks. However, I at least find myself feeling weirdly optimistic. I don't know if it's just me, but it felt like the level of play started to increase in the last few weeks. Like they're starting to figure a couple of things out. A good map against Crazy Raccoon, a good map to Zeta, plus a shocking upset over AGG. It feels like the identity is starting to take form, and that is to play through your DPS and take advantage of the map picks. Their DPS have been putting in some serious work as of late, and I think if they can get hot, it just might save them from going home early. They gotta find their footing with the consistency for sure, but at least in my eyes, there is some hope just knowing the talent. Now we have to see if they can put 2 and 2 together. Surprisingly finishing just above them, but also getting 3 wins this stage, was Old Ocean. Ryu Jae-hong and his squad made it back to OWCS for a second time, and shockingly, they were kind of fun to watch. They improved a lot since the last time they made it here, and I'm all for it. Seeing a Jae-hong team win some meaningful games in 2025 hits different as an OG fan. A team with no real expectations found themselves with a near even map differential on the qualifier, and considering the competitive nature of this region, That's pretty impressive. They even had a couple of dominant showings while giving some better teams a run for their money. They showed some good improvement in a short amount of time. It wasn't that long ago where Pokerface was beating the brakes off of them in the promotion relegation, and now all of a sudden they find themselves being a better team, at least in the head-to-head. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with what I saw. They're not world beaters, but man, they're way more competitive than I ever could have imagined. The tank play wasn't as bad as I thought. Jaehong seemed to find his footing, especially playing more of the Life Weaver and Juno compared to maybe what we saw last year out of him, and the DPS play was incredible. Becky and Probe played some amazing games, the true backbone of the team. And if they play well, I think an upset is almost always possible against some of these more vulnerable teams. They live and die by their performances, and so far it's worked out in their favor. If Becky and Probe heat up in a high-pressure game, they could easily find themselves pretty far in this last chance qualifier. I never thought I'd ever say this, but Old Ocean actually have a chance at this. What a crazy year we're living in. And of course, just missing the cut as referenced earlier, you have Falcons. They are not going to be automatically qualified thanks to a tiebreaker with, shockingly, Zeta Division of all teams. I never thought I'd see a low worse than last year's midseason form for Falcons, but here we are. The once unstoppable titan of the league looked very human in that round robin. They've been trying to acclimate a couple of new pieces on the roster and merit in someone, but it just hasn't gone well so far. Let's call it how it is. Falcons were mediocre this stage. They got a quality win or two right at the start, but things spiraled quickly. There was an obvious lack of comfort from the team this stage. They want to incorporate some new weapons to make this team more dangerous, but it's a process. You're messing with something that won you a championship last year, and while it feels justified knowing the players that they got, it still can take its toll. There's a bit of an adjustment period. The lineup changes have been so egregious that now they have Proper taking a break and Hanbin not playing as much as he used to. Proper not playing. In what freaking universe, man? Things just don't feel right in Falcon Land currently. It's still early and things could get a lot better eventually, but right now, here in the present, things feel forced and kinda awkward. I never thought I'd hear myself saying these words, but someone in particular has looked very human. It's been a major adjustment for the former OWL MVP, and he's just not there yet. The team seems to look a lot more competent when Hanbin's in the game. Is someone just not ready yet? Is there a playstyle concern going on? Can Ham adjust to better match the rest of his team? The talent should make this team insane, but sometimes chemistry and scheme fit can be more important, and right now that truth is rearing its ugly head. Now, thankfully, Merritt hasn't been quite as bad as someone. Never thought I'd hear myself say that. I think he's had some good moments on Freya, but unfortunately, he does come with his limitations, especially in the sense that his hero pool is significantly less versatile than Proper. Proper and Stalker are the glue that hold this team together, and I fear that not having them out there consistently will lead to an imbalance and their demise. In an effort to make their team the best it can be, Falcons look confused, weak, and ultimately beatable. They're facing so many battles that go even beyond their opponents themselves, and that's a genuine concern when you're trying to win a tournament. If there was ever a time for this team to miss a tournament, it could very well be right now. And I'd argue Zeta Division are in a pretty similar situation. Another team that was very dominant at one time, but now turned human because of a major lineup adjustment. They had their moments for sure, but the drop many of us expected definitely came to light. What they're doing isn't easy. They lost Violet, one of the best players to ever touch the game, and in his place at main support is alexyOWL, who has pretty much never touched the position in his life. Naturally, there's going to be some growing pains with playstyle, not to mention the obvious limitations with the hero pool. alexyOWL is a fantastic player, but he can only do so much with his lack of experience at this position. He'll do alright on some heroes, but on others, there's an obvious gap. Having any kind of weakness in such a competitive region is asking for trouble, and Zeta is currently finding that out the hard way as the level of confidence in them continues to drop. The amazing talent of this team with guys like Bernard and Pelican simply can't bail them out every single time they're in a tough situation, and it's on the team to figure out how they can disguise these weaknesses. They're navigating through a series of disappointing outcomes over the last year or so, plus the whole adjustment at main support, and you have to wonder if they're starting to feel a little overwhelmed. Just like Falcons, There's no guarantee for Zeta at this moment. Zeta are more vulnerable than ever before, arguably. This tournament will be a major test to see if they can still hang around. And that mainly has to do because of some of the new kids on the block. Teams that have finally risen up the ladder. A team like T1, for example. I had high hopes based off of what I heard from pre-stage 2 and scrims, and so far they haven't let any of us down. Major improvements compared to stage 1. Much better consistency, while overcoming some teams that once gave them trouble. Beating 2 of the big 3 from last stage is a major achievement for this team. They beat freaking crazy Raccoon, man, and they beat them good. Like, they had control for most of the series, and nobody else even came close. The growth in a short period of time is promising, and I love the desire to win they're showing. Their confidence level is at an all-time high, and they have a shot at redemption here. This is where their journey ended last stage with a major choke, with a chip on their shoulder, and now a visibly improved level of skill. This could be their chance to make a name for themselves. Now, you can never truly fully count out Falcons or Zeta knowing the pedigree of players, but it feels like T1 may finally have an advantage over them. They have the stability and the improvement to stay above them. Donghak is causing mayhem as a leader, as the team plays around him with some unique comps ranging from Ball to Rhine. And it seems like Zest has rediscovered his OWL form, and I think paired up next to Proud, that they finally have a complete lineup. Between the improvements of the team and the regression of others, there's no reason why this team should not have a chance to advance, and at this point, it feels like it's all on them. Then there's the surprise team of the stage, AGG, formerly known as Way. The moment that I saw Who Are You leave this roster, I figured that a fall-off was coming. But no. The nucleus of the roster being intact was clearly much more important. They just needed the right plug-and-play guy in return, and they've gotten it with Sun Jun. He's been reliable throughout the stage, and the team itself has demonstrated that consistency you are looking for in a tournament-caliber team. Aid still looks great. Milguru's doing well by himself out there. The backline is still good. It's showing that last stage clearly was not a fluke. We're talking second place in the stage, only 2 losses total, one being to Crazy Raccoon, which there's no shame in, and one shocking loss to Poker Face. But outside of that, they've mostly been in control, even putting Falcons, Zeta, and T1 in their place. It hasn't always been perfect, but this roster is super clutch when they need to be, and I feel that they clearly have some big advantages over a lot of the other main threats of the region. To say I'm impressed would be a huge discredit to how this team has performed. Top 4 is insanely doable, and now is the time to strike. But if they want to be number 1, they've got a long way to go, and that's all thanks to Crazy Raccoon, who yet again got first place in the region. After 2 stages, they are still clearly the best team. 1 loss the entire stage, and only 4 map losses total. Think about it. Outside of losing to T1, where they dropped 3, they only lost 1 map for the rest of the stage. It was a breeze for them. Winning the Champions Clash in China wasn't enough. They're hungry to win anything and everything they can get their grimy little gamer fingers on, and with how they're playing, they just might. Usually they're prone to a Falcons upset, but that feeling is becoming increasingly unlikely knowing how they're playing right now. Could T1 possibly upset them again? I mean, yeah, I guess, but Falcons are the only team to ever do that. As far as any of us should be concerned, Crazy Raccoon once again control their own destiny, and if they play their typical brand of Overwatch, they'll be fine. They showed that in the qualifiers as much, and with the experience factor on their side, they have an especially big advantage over some of the newcomers taking the place of Zeta and Falcons. I think so long as it's not hard Malgameta, it's hard to not feel good about their chances. From my perspective, they're in a really good place. Lip and Heesang have most of their comfort picks available, while Chorong and Shu seem to have even more options at their disposal with the rise of Lifeweaver and BAP recently. I want to have bad things to say about this team, but there's not much. They played 1 bad game all stage. They're the overwhelming favorites, and that's nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing that is worth noting potentially is technically they did already qualify for the mid-season tournament because they won the Champions Clash, so maybe that could affect how they and other teams play. But in my opinion, I doubt that stops them from trying to win it all, because why wouldn't they? And there's a summary of all the teams, so let's get down to business. The predictions. So there's 3 separate parts to this thing: the last chance qualifier, the seeding decider, and the final bracket. Starting with the LCQ, you have Falcons, Old Ocean, Pokerface, and Onside Gaming. 2 of them will advance to the final. In my opinion, those teams will be Falcons and Pokerface. Falcons, despite being vulnerable, should still clear the other teams here. They've already done it, so why can't they do it again? Even if they're not at their best, they have more than enough talent to cover here. I feel like knowing the upside that the biggest threat should be Pokerface, but even if they somehow lost to them, Falcons would have another opportunity, and it feels unlikely they would lose to Old Ocean or Onside. I mean, outside of Becky and maybe Probe, who on either team could keep up with the talent of Falcons? Absolutely nobody. Maybe they won't go all the way this time, but I highly doubt that Falcons are losing in the LCQ. I mean, come on. It's the other team that joins them where things could go in a lot of directions. They didn't do all that great against Old Ocean, and they barely beat Onside, but I do like how Pokerface played towards the end of the stage, and I'm of the belief that it's good to value the hot hand at times, and this scenario, I feel like doing it. I believe this team has a little bit more upside to them, and with their backs against the wall, I'm banking on them to show it. That DPS line is playing way too good to ignore, and I think here in the LCQ that they'll have some solid outings. In a place where the skill level is generally lower, your talent is gonna shine through, and we know Pokerface has plenty of it based on some recent results. I'm putting a lot of stock into that AGG win. That was huge. Maybe I go on to regret restoring my faith in them, but for this last time, I'm gonna do it. But it's not to say that Old Ocean or even Onside have zero chance though. I think all 3 of them are on a similar level, and previous results would suggest that. In the same way that I expect Pokerface's DPS to be legit, I can totally see a similar thing happening with Old Ocean, where they take over the game, and they just don't let victory escape their grasp. Becky is the best player, I would say, outside of the non-Falcons guys, and very well could take things into his own hands to make sure they win. Old Ocean have a very different vibe to them, and their experience could be a massive advantage compared to some of these Pokerface players. In the end, though, I think that Onside don't have enough to really feel good about them knowing where they are, and I think that Pokerface's upside intrigues me just a little more than my love for Old Ocean. I think the tide is starting to turn. It won't be like the last time they played if they end up meeting, hence why I'm going with Poker. This stage has been really weird in Korea, so you kind of have to expect the unexpected, and that's why I'm changing things up here. Falcons and Pokerface to survive. Then there's the seeding decider, which generally isn't that important since all 4 teams advance anyway, but it definitely could help land you a more favorable position in the bracket. So to quickly go through it, Crazy Raccoon are getting first. They're on a different level right now, and I think it would take them having a pretty bad day for any of their opponents to beat them. And I'm going to follow that up with T1 in second, AGG in third, and Zeta in fourth. I like T1 a bit more as a team compared to AGG, but it is worth noting that every time they play, T1 seems to lose, ranging back to the Way days. They've been their kryptonite all year, and that certainly could be problematic for T1 fans out there. However, T1 did lose to them a long time ago, back in week 1, and since then, they've been a much better team, and they're on a 6-game winning streak. And I like to think, like I said earlier, that it's good to ride with the hot hand. Their level of play has improved a lot since then, and I believe this is where they finally overcome their demons. Maybe it'll be a little controversial to some to have Zeta be fourth in a seeding decider, but with how they're playing right now, it feels somewhat justified to me, so that's what I'm going with. So the way in which the bracket will be shaped in terms of the finals obviously depends on the wins and losses, as well as who the top seed picks off their bye, but generally that's how I think we're going to get to this moment. As for who wins and who advances in that final bracket, I'm going on a limb and saying that the teams to advance are Crazy Raccoon, Zeta Division, T1, and AGG. I'm going with a Crazy Raccoon first place over T1 in the finals. Crazy Raccoon are simply way better and way more consistent than the rest of the competition, and I don't think anything short of first place will satisfy them, and it probably would take a miracle to defeat them at this point. I mean, they lost Korea Stage 1, and I largely expect them to come out angry and breeze through this tournament without much trouble. They have the most star power, a good set of compositions to dominate with, and most importantly, their biggest rivals are playing the worst Overwatch we've seen out of them under the Falcons alias. Falcons have been the only team to push Crazy Raccoon consistently, and right now, they're not the biggest threat. History would suggest this goes exactly how you'd think, so that's where I'm going. Now again, I am a little scared of that AGG T1 matchup. AGG do live rent-free in these guys' heads, and I think because Mealguru has such a similar hero pool to Donghak, that T1 just can't do anything to catch those guys off guard. A similar playstyle seems to be a nightmare matchup, but I again am trusting in the upside of T1 to get it done and make the final. They're a better team than they were last month, and when in doubt, we stick with the hot hand around here. Look at how Pokerface beat them and adjust accordingly. Perhaps I'm underestimating these guys knowing their history, but I feel like if T1 beat AGG, they have a great chance of making the finals, as I don't have that much faith in Falcons and Zeta with how they're currently performing. And speaking of Falcons, you probably noticed, but I don't even have them making the cut. I don't like how they're playing as a team. They feel deflated, defeated even. They're very fixated on trying to make the current situation work, and it feels like a losing formula. If they insist on continuing to play someone more than Hanbin, with Merit autopiloting on Tracer, with no proper to be found, it might be curtains. Could they possibly lock in like they did last year when doubts were starting to arise? I mean, you can't rule it out. That experience and talent factor is absolutely stunning. You can't underestimate them. But without Proper and how much of a leader he was during those times, it won't be as easy. The way the team is playing right now, to me at least, is not good enough, and I'm not sure if one extra week solves all of the problems, especially considering the general vibes of the team right now. Generally though, I have this gut feeling that either Falcons or Zeta are not making it, especially since there's a world where they could be playing each other round one. In the result that my predictions come true, they literally would. It's possible. It is a crazy world that we're living in here. Times are changing before our very eyes. It's a period of transition for the powerhouses, and I believe in the newcomers to potentially make the most of it. So yeah, all that said, that's what I've got advancing to the Asia tournament. Crazy Raccoon take first place. You got T1, AGG, and Zeta. A lot of exciting Overwatch is about to be played, and at this point, who the hell knows what's gonna happen? Leave a comment on who you think wins, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace.